I still remember the day my brother died. Not the funeral, though that memory is seared into my brain too, but the actual day. February 17th, 2023, a Friday. The Houston air was unseasonably warm, the kind of false spring that teases you before winter throws one last punch. I was at home, half watching some mindless reality show, when my phone buzzed with a news alert. There had been an incident at the Johnson Space Center. Details were sparse, but preliminary reports mentioned an explosion in one of the research wings. My heart sank. Ryan worked in that building. I called him immediately. No answer. I called again and again. Then I tried his supervisor, his roommate, anyone who might know something. Nothing. I barely remember driving there, pushing through the crowd that had gathered behind the police tape. The authorities were keeping civilians back, but I needed to know. I needed to see. It wasn't until nearly midnight that a grim-faced NASA official pulled me aside. "Mr. Wells, I'm deeply sorry to inform you." They called it an equipment malfunction, said Ryan had been working late, alone, on some classified project, that he'd followed all safety protocols, that sometimes, despite every precaution, accidents happen. Bullshit. My brother was meticulous, cautious to a fault. He triple-checked everything, from grocery lists to complex code. And in the weeks before his death, he'd been different. Distracted. Sometimes excited, sometimes afraid. He'd call me at odd hours, start to say something important, then stop himself. "Can't talk about it, James," he'd say. "But when this is over, man, the world's gonna change." The last time we spoke, 2 days before the accident, he seemed agitated. "If anything happens to me," he said, "check my apartment, the Tolkien book on my nightstand." I laughed it off then. Now, I wish I'd listened more carefully. At the memorial service, I noticed them. 3 men in identical dark suits standing at the back. They didn't speak to anyone, didn't sign the guest book. They just watched. When I approached, they disappeared. It took me weeks to work up the courage to go to Ryan's apartment. His roommate had moved out, unable to deal with the memories. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. Dirty coffee mug in the sink, half-finished crossword on the table, clothes still in the dryer. On his nightstand sat a well-worn copy of The Fellowship of the Ring. I flipped through it, not sure what I was looking for, until a folded piece of paper slipped out. It was a letter, written in my brother's precise handwriting. "James, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. What I'm about to tell you sounds insane, but I swear it's true. They found something out there near Europa. Not just ice or bacteria or some other minor discovery. A portal. And we've been sending people through it. I'm next on the list. If I don't make it back, find Dr. Harrison Wells, no relation. He knows everything." At the bottom was a list, 10 rules, numbered and underlined twice. "The Europa Protocol. Follow these exactly if you want to survive." I almost threw it away. Almost convinced myself it was a sick joke or the ramblings of a stressed mind. But then I remembered the men at the funeral, the strange calls, the way NASA had cremated his body before I could demand an independent autopsy. So I found Dr. Wells, and that's when everything changed. It took me 3 weeks to track down Dr. Harrison Wells. He wasn't listed in any NASA directory, and his social media presence had been scrubbed clean. I finally found him teaching an advanced astrophysics seminar at Rice University under a different name, Harry Wilson. The lecture hall was nearly empty when I slipped in through the back door. Just 7 students scattered across seats designed for 100. Dr. Wells, or Wilson, was a tall, gaunt man with wire-rimmed glasses and premature grey streaking through his dark hair. He looked older than his file photo, more haggard, like someone running on caffeine and fear. When the students filed out, I approached him. "Dr. Harrison Wells." He froze, eyes darting to the exits. "You've made a mistake. I'm Dr. Wilson." I pulled out the letter. My brother was Ryan Wells. He left this for me before he died. The blood drained from his face. He grabbed my arm with surprising strength and pulled me into a nearby supply closet, locking the door behind us. "Who else knows you're here?" he whispered. "No one." "You weren't followed?" "I don't think so." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "They told us Ryan died in an accident. That's the official story." "Fuck." It was barely audible, just a breath of air. "Your brother was brilliant. Too brilliant. He figured it out." "Figured what out?" "The portal isn't what they told us it was. It's not a scientific miracle, it's a trap." He unlocked the door. "We can't talk here. Meet me at the Buffalo Bayou Park under the War Bridge at midnight. Come alone and make sure you aren't followed." That gave me 8 hours to kill. I drove aimlessly around Houston, switching cars at a rental place, paying cash. Was I being paranoid? Probably. But Ryan's warning kept echoing in my head. The night was muggy when I arrived at the park, mosquitoes buzzing in clouds around the lamps. Beneath the bridge, bats were emerging for their nightly hunt, thousands of them spiraling up into the darkness. I checked my watch, 11:58 p.m. At exactly midnight, Wells emerged from the shadows. He'd changed into jeans and a worn hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. "Show me the rules," he said without preamble. I handed him the folded paper. He scanned it, nodding slowly. "Ryan wrote these?" "Yes. What do they mean?" "They're survival protocols. For the portal." He handed the paper back. "NASA discovered it 16 months ago. A spatial anomaly near Europa's southern hemisphere. At first we thought it was just a strange gravitational distortion, but then we realized it was stable, fixed, and it was emitting complex radiation patterns. Like a signal?" "Exactly like a signal. After 3 months of observation, we sent a probe through. It transmitted back for 12 seconds before going dark. But those 12 seconds..." His voice cracked. "It showed us another world. Habitable. Structures that couldn't possibly be natural. A bat swooped low between us, its wings a whisper in the humid air. Last September they sent the first human, Commander Phillips. He came back. Wrong. Then they sent another. And another." "My brother was next," I said. Wells nodded. "Ryan was developing predictive algorithms for the portal's behavior. He noticed patterns no one else did. The portal isn't random. It opens and closes based on precise mathematical sequences. And it adapts. It learns." "Learns what?" "How to get what it wants." Wells looked over his shoulder, then lowered his voice. "NASA's running a black program called Hermes, deep classified. They've sent 17 people through that portal. Only 11 came back, and those who returned changed." "Changed how?" "Subtly. Personality shifts, memory gaps, new habits. But Ryan discovered something worse. Microscopic changes to their DNA. Progressive changes. Like their bodies were being rewritten." A crackle in the bushes made Wells jump. Just a raccoon lumbering down to the water's edge. "I have to go. They're watching me." He pressed a small flash drive into my palm. Ryan backed up his findings. "The passcode is your mother's maiden name, plus the day you broke your arm in 5th grade. "How did he know that?" "Your brother knew everything." Wells was already backing away. "If you want answers, real answers, you'll need to get inside Hermes. The first rule will show you how..." "Wait! How do I contact you?" "You don't. Not if you want to live." He paused. "Ryan was my friend. He trusted you. So I'm trusting you too. But remember this, once you start down this path, there's no turning back. The rules are all that will keep you alive." He melted into the darkness beneath the bridge. Back in my car, I unfolded the paper again, reading the first rule aloud. Rule number 1. To gain access to Project Hermes, locate Security Officer Frank Dobson. He drinks every Thursday night at the Lone Star Bar on Navigation Boulevard. His access badge uses an outdated RFS encryption. A duplicate can be made with the right equipment. I stared at the words, my brother's neat handwriting suddenly feeling like a map to my own destruction. But I owed Ryan the truth. I owed him justice. I started the car. The Lone Star Bar on Navigation Boulevard was exactly what you'd expect from a dive frequented by government employees looking to forget their classified day jobs. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and a jukebox that had apparently been stuck on classic rock since 1986. I'd been here 3 Thursdays in a row watching Security Officer Frank Dobson drink himself into a predictable stupor. Dobson was a creature of habit. Arrived at 7:30 p.m, ordered 2 fingers of bourbon neat, nursed it for exactly 20 minutes, then switched to beer, always Shiner Bock, until 11 p.m, when he'd pay his tab and stumble to his car. I'd spent those 3 weeks gathering equipment and studying the flash drive Wells had given me. Ryan's files were encrypted, fragmented, and hidden within innocent-looking documents. Family photos with code embedded in the metadata, Spotify playlists where the first letter of each song spelled out messages. My brother had been terrified but methodical. Tonight was the night. I took a seat at the far end of the bar, ordered a club soda, and waited. The clock behind the bar ticked over to 7:30, and right on schedule, Dobson pushed through the door. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, with a military haircut and the rounded posture of someone who'd spent decades at a desk. His NASA security badge was clipped to his belt, partially hidden by his untucked shirt. Tonight, he looked worse than usual. Red-rimmed eyes, tie askew. The bartender, Travis, nodded at him. "The usual, Frank," Dobson grunted, sliding onto his regular stool. I watched his reflection in the mirrored wall behind the bar, counting the minutes. According to Ryan's notes, Dobson was a mid-level security administrator with just enough clearance to access the Hermes wing. He wasn't important enough to be monitored closely, but not insignificant enough to have restricted access. Perfect. At 9:45 p.m, Dobson made his predictable trip to the restroom. I waited 10 seconds, then followed. The bathroom was empty except for Dobson standing at the urinal. I moved to the sink, washing my hands slowly. When he finished and turned to leave, I deliberately knocked my phone to the floor, sending it skittering beneath his feet. "Sorry, man," I said, bending to retrieve it. As I straightened up, I swayed slightly, bumping against him. "Watch it," he muttered. "My bad," I replied, slipping his badge into my pocket while simultaneously planting the counterfeit back on his belt. The duplicate wouldn't work, but it would prevent him from noticing the theft immediately. Back at my table, I slipped the badge into the reader I'd hidden in my jacket, a modified RFID cloner Ryan had detailed in his notes. The device blinked green, copy complete. I left cash on the table and slipped out the back door. In my car, I examined the original badge, comparing it to the specifications in Ryan's files. The encryption was indeed outdated. RFS-7, a system NASA had officially upgraded from 2 years ago. Apparently, not all departments had made the switch. Using the equipment I'd assembled, I began creating a functional duplicate. The process took nearly 3 hours in my motel room, requiring precision soldering and programming. By 3 a.m., I had a working replica of Dobson's badge with elevated clearance levels. At 4 a.m., my burner phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? You took the badge." It was Wells, his voice tight with urgency. "How did you—" "I've been monitoring Dobson. You have 24 hours before the system flags the duplicate access patterns. After that, they'll lock everything down. You need the second rule. I have it right here. Read it to me." I unfolded Ryan's letter. Rule number 2, Hermes access requires biometric verification. The scanner checks pulse, body temperature, and stress hormones. Stay calm. Breathe normally. If your vitals spike, you'll trigger a lockdown. Take 10 milligrams of propranolol 30 minutes before entry. Do you have the medication? Yes. Another item from Ryan's checklist that I'd acquired through less than legal channels. Good. Wells paused. There's something else. Rule number 3. You need to understand it before you go in. I glanced down at the paper. Rule number 3. All Hermes personnel undergo weekly memory screenings. They'll detect an imposter immediately unless you have baseline scans to reference. In the northwest corner of sub-basement C, room 47, there's a backup server containing all employee baselines. Upload the Blackfish program from any terminal to create a temporary profile. Ryan wrote a program. Your brother prepared for everything. It's on the drive I gave you, hidden in a file labeled Fantasy Football 2022. The program will only work for 6 hours, so once you're in, you need to move fast. What am I looking for exactly? Project documentation, specifically anything labeled returner analysis or transit logs. That will tell you what happened to the people who came back through the portal. Wells's voice dropped. And James, there's another rule you should pay special attention to. Rule number 7. I flipped the page. Rule number 7. If you encounter any returner, do not... Not over the phone, Wells interrupted sharply. Just remember it. Memorize all the rules before you go in. When should I make my move? Tomorrow night, Saturday. Minimal weekend staff. Most administrators gone. Use the service entrance on the east side of Building 29. Badge in at exactly 9:47 p.m. That's when the security camera loop resets. How do you know all this? A bitter laugh. I helped design the system before they pushed me out. Why are you helping me? The line went silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, because I sent my brother through that portal too. He came back, but it wasn't him anymore. The line went dead. I spent the rest of the night studying the remaining rules, committing them to memory, preparing my equipment. According to Ryan's notes, I'd have approximately 2 hours inside before the night shift did their rounds. Rule number 4 warned about the radiation detection scanners and how to bypass them. Rule number 5 detailed the camera blind spots. Rule number 6 was about emergency protocols and how to exit if things went south. But it was rule number 7 that kept drawing my attention. Rule number 7. If you encounter any returner, do not engage directly. They appear human but are not. They can sense fear pheromones. If one approaches you, maintain eye contact, but look at the space between their eyebrows, not directly into their eyes. Speak normally. If they touch you, you have approximately 15 seconds before the connection becomes irreversible. What the hell had NASA brought back through that portal? As dawn broke, I popped the flash drive into my laptop one last time, extracting the Blackfish program and loading it onto a clean thumb drive. Then I destroyed the original, scattering pieces in dumpsters across 3 different neighborhoods. Tomorrow night, I'd break into one of the most secure facilities in the country, risking imprisonment or worse, to find out what had really happened to my brother. The truth was through that portal, and I was going in. Saturday, 9:30 p.m. I parked 3 blocks from the Johnson Space Center in a 24-hour grocery store lot, my nondescript Toyota Corolla blending in with the other cars. I dressed the part, khakis, button-up shirt, NASA contractor lanyard with a fake ID. According to Ryan's notes, weekend staff rarely looked closely. At precisely 9:42 p.m., I took the propranolol with a swig of water, feeling my racing heart gradually steady as the beta blocker took effect. 5 minutes later, I was walking briskly across the east parking lot toward Building 29, just another employee working late. The service entrance was tucked between 2 loading docks, partially obscured by a dumpster. I checked my watch, 9:46 p.m., 1 minute to go. A security guard rounded the corner, and I immediately bent down, pretending to tie my shoe. He passed without a second glance, disappearing around the building. At exactly 9:47 p.m., I swiped Dobson's cloned badge. The reader blinked green. I was in. The service corridor was dimly lit and smelled of industrial cleaner. I moved quickly, following the memorized path from Ryan's notes. Left at the first junction, right at the water fountain, down the stairs to sub-basement B. The few people I passed barely looked up from their phones or tablets, nodding vaguely in that universal acknowledgement between colleagues who don't actually know each other. Sub-basement C required another badge swipe. I held my breath as I passed the card over the reader, exhaling only when the light turned green. The biometric scanner glowed ominously beside the door. This would be the real test. I placed my hand on the panel, fixing my breathing to a steady rhythm. Stay calm. Breathe normally. The scanner hummed. 1 second, 2, 3. Then a soft beep and the door clicked open. Sub-basement C was noticeably different from the upper levels. Sterile white walls, recessed lighting, an almost hospital-like atmosphere. The air was cooler, drier. I checked the directory on the wall, locating room 47, northwest corner, just as Ryan had noted. The hallway stretched before me, eerily empty. Each door had a small window and a keypad lock. Through one, I glimpsed a laboratory filled with equipment I didn't recognize. Through another, rows of servers blinking silently. Room 47 was unmarked, except for its number. Another badge swipe, another green light. Inside was a small server room, humming with the quiet efficiency of powerful computers. According to Ryan's notes, this room housed backup data for the biometric systems, the perfect place to insert the Blackfish program. I located an access terminal and plugged in the thumb drive. The program initiated automatically, a command window briefly flashing before disappearing. A progress bar appeared. Creating temporary profile. Estimated time, 4 minutes. I used those minutes to memorize the layout visible on a fire evacuation map mounted near the door. The Hermes project was housed in the restricted east wing of sub-basement C, accessible through a checkpoint that required both badge authorization and biometric confirmation, which I now had thanks to the Blackfish program. The drive ejected itself when the process completed. I pocketed it and headed for the checkpoint, each step measured and deliberate. My heart wanted to race, but the propranolol kept it steady. 2 guards manned the Hermes checkpoint, both armed with sidearms. One was scrolling through his phone. The other watched monitors displaying camera feeds. ID, the first guard said without looking up. I handed over the badge. He scanned it, glanced at the screen, then at me. Systems integration? He asked. I nodded, recalling the department Ryan had suggested using as cover. Server maintenance. Got an alert about packet loss on the east node. Technical jargon. Vague enough to sound legitimate, specific enough to discourage further questions. Biometric. I placed my hand on the scanner, keeping my breathing even. The machine beeped. The guard nodded. You know where you're going? East node server rack, section H. Sign the log. I scribbled an illegible signature on the clipboard, and they buzzed me through. Beyond the checkpoint, the atmosphere changed again. The ceiling was higher, the hallway wider. Signs mounted on the walls displayed unfamiliar acronyms. Hermes A, Hermes B, Hermes T. According to Ryan's files, I needed Hermes T, the transit division. A woman in a lab coat emerged from a door ahead, and I immediately ducked into an alcove, pretending to check something on my phone. She passed without looking my way, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Hermes T was at the end of the hallway, behind double doors marked Authorized Personnel Only. My badge worked again, and I slipped inside. The room beyond was massive. A 2-story open space dominated by banks of computers, monitoring equipment, and a large central platform that reminded me of an MRI machine. Was this where they sent people through, or received them back? Along the far wall was a row of glass-fronted offices. One of them would have the files I needed. I moved quickly to the nearest computer terminal and logged in using the credentials the Blackfish program had generated. The system accepted them without protest. A quick search located the file directories Ryan had mentioned, returner analysis and transit logs. The transit logs were detailed: dates, times, personnel, equipment. 17 missions through the portal, 11 returns, 6 losses. Ryan's name was on mission T-17, scheduled for February 17th, 2023, the day of the accident. The entry was marked: Mission aborted, containment breach, subject terminated. My hands trembled as I clicked on returner analysis. A password prompt appeared. I tried several combinations Ryan had noted as common in the system. None worked. Then I noticed a pattern in the mission logs. Each returner had been assigned a code name upon re-entry, mythological figures: Orpheus, Eurydice, Persephone, Odysseus. I tried Olympus. Access granted. What I saw next made me physically recoil from the screen. Medical scans, tissue samples, DNA analysis, brain activity patterns. The returners had been subjected to extensive testing, and the results were impossible. Progressive genetic alterations, brainwave patterns that shifted over time, cellular structures that seemed to be slowly reorganizing themselves, and behavioral notes that described personality changes, memory anomalies, and increasing synchronization between returners. One report caught my attention, dated just weeks before Ryan's death. It contained side-by-side comparisons of original personnel DNA and returner DNA, with specific sections highlighted. The analysis noted genetic divergence increasing at predicted rate. Estimate 87% conversion by day 60. Subject exhibits coordinated behaviors when proximity to other returners less than 50 meters. Recommend isolation protocols. Another file contained surveillance videos. I clicked on one labeled Returner Interaction Test B-7. The video showed two returners, both men in their 30s, seated at a table in what looked like an interrogation room. They weren't speaking, weren't even looking at each other, but their hands were moving in identical patterns, tapping the same rhythm on the table. The timestamp showed this continuing for over an hour without variation. A chill crept up my spine despite the medication. These people weren't just changed, they were becoming something else entirely, something coordinated, connected. I downloaded everything I could onto a second thumb drive, then started searching for specific information about Ryan. If he was scheduled for a mission but never went through, why was he terminated? A noise from the hallway made me freeze, voices approaching. I quickly closed the files and moved toward a door marked Equipment Storage at the back of the room. It was unlocked. Inside, shelves lined the walls, filled with specialized gear I didn't recognize. Helmets with unusual modifications, suits that resembled hazmat gear but with extra layers and monitoring equipment attached, and devices that looked like weapons but unlike any firearms I'd seen before. The voices entered the main room, two men discussing system calibrations. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. "Fifth fluctuation this week," one was saying. "The pattern is accelerating." "Control thinks it's responding to the returners," the other replied, "like it knows they're here. That's why they're pushing for the Jupiter mission, get them off-world, back to the source. After what happened to Wells, you couldn't pay me enough." My brother's name made me lean closer to the door. That wasn't supposed to happen. He accessed restricted files, learned about the genetic conversion, threatened to go public. So they scheduled him for a mission. Seems risky. They never intended to send him through, just needed him in the transit chamber for the accident. The words hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't an accident. They'd murdered Ryan to keep him quiet. Security found someone accessing his files yesterday. They're sweeping the facility tomorrow. Another leak? Maybe. Or maybe one of them. They're getting smarter, finding ways around the monitoring systems. Their voices faded as they moved toward the other end of the room. I waited 5 agonizing minutes before slipping out of the storage room and heading for the exit. I made it back to the checkpoint without incident, signed out, and retraced my steps through the labyrinthine hallways. Every person I passed now seemed suspect. Were they normal humans? Or returners, slowly transforming into... what? It wasn't until I was back in my car, hands shaking as I started the engine, that I realized I'd forgotten to check rule number 8. I pulled out Ryan's list with trembling fingers. Rule number 8. After accessing Hermes files, assume all electronic devices are compromised. Discard phone, credit cards, anything with RFID. They can track you through any networked system. You have 12 hours before they identify the breach. I looked at my phone on the passenger seat, suddenly seeing it as the tracking device it was. 12 hours. The clock was ticking. I drove exactly 4 miles from Johnson Space Center before pulling into a 24-hour Walmart. Inside, I purchased a cheap prepaid phone, a battery-operated alarm clock, a road atlas, and $200 in cash back on the transaction. I paid with my credit card for the last time. In the parking lot, I transferred the thumb drive data to a secure cloud account Ryan had set up. The login details had been buried in his fantasy football spreadsheet. Then I removed the battery from my smartphone, dropped it in a storm drain, and tossed the phone itself into the bed of a pickup truck with Louisiana plates. Rule number 8 was just the beginning. The next one was more specific. Rule number 9. After exposure, go to ground. No hotels, no motels, no rentals. Use the storage unit at Armadillo Self-Storage on Highway 35. Unit 217. Code 47829. Everything you need is inside. I followed the rule exactly, taking a meandering route to Highway 35, constantly checking my rearview mirror for tails. The storage facility was a sprawling complex of identical orange doors and chain-link fencing, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights despite the late hour. A bored attendant buzzed me through the gate without looking up from his magazine. Unit 217 was at the back of the lot, partially hidden by a large RV being stored in the adjacent space. I punched in the code and the padlock clicked open. I raised the door just enough to slip inside, then pulled it shut behind me. The beam from my flashlight revealed a small space, meticulously organized. A cot with a sleeping bag. A plastic storage container labeled supplies. A locked gun case. A small desk with a laptop, not connected to any network, based on the missing wireless card. And on the wall, a detailed map of the United States with multiple locations circled in red. I opened the supply container first. It contained 3 changes of clothes, all in my size. Basic toiletries, first aid kit, 3 different IDs with my photo but different names, $2,000 in cash, a prepaid gas card, non-perishable food, and a sealed envelope with my name, my real name, written on it in Ryan's handwriting. Inside was a letter. James, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you've discovered enough about Hermes to be in danger. I'm sorry for dragging you into this, but there was no one else I could trust. What you found at Johnson is just the beginning. The portal near Europa isn't a natural phenomenon. It was created, or at least activated, using technology we don't fully understand. We didn't discover it by accident. We were led to it. The first signals came in 2018, targeted specifically at our deep space communications array, patterns that couldn't be natural. Dr. Wells was the first to decode them. Coordinates pointing to Europa. When the probe detected the anomaly exactly where the coordinates indicated, NASA fast-tracked a manned mission to study it remotely. They called it Hermes because it creates a pathway between worlds, like the Greek messenger god. But it's more like a door, and something is coming through. The returners are the proof. Their bodies are being rewritten at the genetic level, creating something that looks human but isn't, not entirely. And they're connected somehow, working towards some goal none of us understand. I've included coordinates for 3 safe locations. Memorize them, then burn this letter. Contact only the people on the list below. They know what's happening and can help. And James, the most important thing. Rule number 10, memorize it. It may save your life. I love you, brother. Ryan, I checked the original list. Rule number 10 was brief but chilling. Rule number 10, if you encounter a returner, verify their humanity. Ask them to complete this sequence. 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. A true human will answer 9. A returner will answer 9, 2, 6. They cannot help it. Their brains are rewired to recognize and complete complex patterns differently. I folded the letter and set it aside, turning to the laptop. It was an older model, modified to prevent any wireless connections. I powered it on and found a single folder on the desktop labeled Hermes Full Report. Inside were hundreds of files, far more comprehensive than what I'd managed to download at Johnson. Video interviews with returners, medical examinations, psychological evaluations, transit data, communication logs. A video file caught my attention. T-11 incident.mp4. I clicked play. The footage showed a transit chamber similar to what I'd seen earlier. A man in a specialized suit, presumably having just returned through the portal, was being helped out of his gear by 2 technicians. Everything seemed normal until the man suddenly grabbed one technician's arm. The audio picked up the technician's startled, "Hey!" Then he went still. For 15 seconds, they remained frozen in that tableau, the returner gripping the technician's bare arm. Then they separated, and both continued as if nothing had happened. Except now they were moving in subtle synchronization, their movements mirroring each other with millisecond precision. The file was dated 6 months ago. According to the attached notes, both men were still working at NASA, passing all psychological evaluations with flying colors. I felt sick. How many others had been converted this way? How many returners, or people touched by returners, were now walking around, looking human, but irrevocably changed? I checked the contact list Ryan had left. 5 names with encoded information on how to reach them securely. I recognized one immediately: Harrison Wells. The others were unfamiliar: Leonard Snyder, Alex Turner, Michael Rodriguez, and Benjamin Prescott. According to Ryan's notes, Rodriguez was former NASA security who'd been pushed out after asking too many questions. He now worked private security in Austin, a 4-hour drive from Houston. He seemed like the safest bet for immediate help. I was transferring essential files to a new thumb drive when I heard a vehicle pull up outside the storage unit. Heavy footsteps approached, then stopped directly in front of my door. I froze, reaching for the gun case. A key rattled in the lock. In one fluid motion, I disconnected the thumb drive, switched off the laptop, and slid under the cot, pulling the sleeping bag down to conceal myself. The door rolled up with a metallic groan. Flashlight beams swept the unit. 2 sets of footsteps. "Clear," a male voice said. "Just standard prepper stuff." "Check for false bottoms in the containers," another voice replied. This one sent a chill through me, flat, emotionless, with an odd cadence that felt somehow wrong. They methodically searched the small space, opening containers, moving the cot. The flashlight beam passed inches from my face, but the sleeping bag's shadow kept me hidden. "Nothing digital," the first voice reported. "He's been here," the second voice insisted. "I can sense it." Sense it? The words from rule number 7 flashed in my mind. They can sense fear pheromones. Was one of these men a returner? "We should expand the search perimeter," the first man suggested. "Number He's still close. The trace is fresh." My pulse pounded in my ears. If they found me, I'd never make it out alive. Not if what I'd learned about returners was true. "Call in the other units," the second voice ordered. Full sweep of the complex and surrounding 3 miles. Their footsteps retreated, but they left the door open. I remained motionless under the cot, barely breathing for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. When I was certain they were gone, I crept out and peered through the gap. The facility was coming alive with activity. Black SUVs with tinted windows were pulling into the parking lot. Men in tactical gear were fanning out across the complex. I had minutes, maybe seconds, before they found me. I grabbed only the essentials: the thumb drive, the cash, 1 fake ID, and Ryan's list of rules, and slipped out the back of the unit where I'd earlier noticed a gap in the exterior fence panel. Squeezing through, I emerged in an empty lot behind the storage facility. Distant shouts told me they'd discovered my escape. I ran, keeping to the shadows, heading for the dense commercial district a 1/4 mile away. As I ran, rule number 10 kept repeating in my mind. A test for humanity. A sequence that could identify who was still human and who had been converted. I'd need it soon if I was going to survive long enough to understand what was really happening with the portal and what it had to do with my brother's death. I had one advantage. I knew the rules. They didn't know I knew. And I was heading for Austin to find Michael Rodriguez. A man who might have answers if I could reach him before they reached me. I spent the night moving through Houston's sprawling commercial districts, avoiding main streets and surveillance cameras. By dawn, I'd made it to a truck stop on the outskirts of the city where I paid cash for a ride with a long-haul trucker heading to San Antonio. He was a heavyset man named Daryl who asked no questions when I offered him $300 for the lift. "Ain't my business what you're running from," he said, eyes fixed on the highway, "long as it ain't the law." "It's complicated," I replied, watching the rear view for any sign of pursuit. "Ain't it always?" We rode in silence for most of the journey. I dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every passing siren or helicopter sound. Paranoia was becoming my new normal. Daryl dropped me at a gas station outside San Antonio. From there, I caught a Greyhound to Austin, paying cash and using the fake ID Ryan had provided. James Marshall, a name generic enough to be forgettable. Austin was humid and overcast when I arrived, the skyline hazy with afternoon thunderclouds. According to Ryan's notes, Michael Rodriguez operated a private security firm called Sentinel Services out of an office in East Austin. The address led me to a converted warehouse in a semi-industrial neighborhood, the kind of area undergoing that awkward transition from manufacturing to trendy startups. Sentinel Services occupied the second floor, a simple reception area with worn leather furniture and framed military commendations on the walls. The receptionist, a young man with close-cropped hair and the alert posture of former military, looked up as I entered. "Help you?" "I need to speak with Michael Rodriguez." "Regarding?" I'd rehearsed this moment. "Tell him it's about Project Olympus and Ryan Wells." The receptionist's neutral expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He picked up the phone, turned away, and spoke too quietly for me to hear. When he hung up, he simply nodded toward a door behind him. "Through there, end of the hall." The hallway was lined with photos, military units, NASA teams, security details for what looked like government installations. I recognized Johnson Space Center in several. Near the end was a framed photo of a younger Rodriguez standing next to Ryan, both wearing NASA security uniforms, smiling at the camera. Rodriguez was waiting in a Spartan office, standing behind his desk rather than sitting. He was a compact man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair cropped short and the weathered face of someone who'd spent years in the sun. His right hand rested near a desk drawer that undoubtedly contained a weapon. "Who are you?" No preamble, no pleasantries. "James Wells. Ryan's brother." His eyes narrowed. "Prove it." I reached slowly into my pocket and produced Ryan's list of rules. "He left these for me. Said you could help." Rodriguez took the paper, scanned it, then met my eyes. 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. Without hesitation, I replied, 9. Some of the tension left his shoulders. He gestured to a chair. "Sit down. You're being followed." "I know. I lost them in Houston, but you didn't lose them. They're tracking you through the CCTV networks using facial recognition. We've got maybe 20 minutes before they triangulate your location." He moved to a computer, typing rapidly. "I've initiated countermeasures, but they'll only buy us time." "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "You don't know me." Rodriguez's expression darkened. "I worked NASA security for 15 years. Ryan was my mentee. When he started noticing patterns with the returners, he came to me. I helped him gather evidence until they pushed me out. Fabricated security violation. But by then, we knew enough to be dangerous." He swiveled his monitor to show me a map of the United States dotted with red markers. Each marker represents a confirmed returner sighting outside of NASA containment. They're spreading, establishing themselves in key locations, government facilities, communications hubs, power stations. "How many are there?" "We've confirmed 43, but that's just the ones we know about. The actual number could be 10 times that." My blood ran cold. What do they want? That's the billion-dollar question. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Did Ryan explain what the portal actually is?" "He said it wasn't natural, that we were led to it." "It's a beacon," Rodriguez said. "A signal sent across space and time to connect 2 points. But it's not a door. It's more like a translation device." "Translation for what?" "Consciousness, information. The returners don't come back physically changed. The changes happen afterward, as if they've been infected with code that slowly rewrites them." He pulled out a secure tablet and showed me classified brain scans. Normal human brain on the left, returner on the right. Notice the activity in the temporal lobe. Completely different patterns. Their brains are being rewired to process information differently, to perceive reality differently. To what end? Preparation. Rodriguez's voice was grim. Think of it like terraforming, but for biology. They're not invading in the traditional sense. They're converting, changing humans to make us compatible with whatever is on the other side. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many people have gone through the portal? Officially, 17, but there have been unauthorized transits. We've identified at least 4 incidents where returners have managed to send others through without NASA's knowledge. He pulled up another file, security footage from Johnson Space Center, showing a returner leading a janitor into a restricted area. The timestamp showed 3:14 a.m. The video ended with a bright flash from behind a closed door. They never found him, Rodriguez said. Officially, he quit his job and moved away, but his family filed a missing persons report 3 days later. And NASA is just letting this happen? Rodriguez's laugh was bitter. NASA is compromised. At least 3 senior administrators are returners now, maybe more. They're pushing for expanded exploration of the portal, more missions, more personnel. My brother discovered this. That's why they killed him. Ryan found something worse. Rodriguez lowered his voice, though we were alone. He discovered that the returners are building something at the Johnson Center, some kind of device. He managed to get partial schematics before they caught him. He handed me a flash drive. Everything we know is on here, including the coordinates for a facility in West Texas where a group of us are gathering, people who know the truth, who are preparing. Preparing for what? The next phase? Look at the timeline of returner activity. He showed me a graph with an exponential curve. It's accelerating. Whatever they're planning, it's coming soon. A notification flashed on his screen. Rodriguez cursed. They've breached my first security layer. We need to move. He led me to a back stairwell. My car's in the alley. We'll take surface streets to avoid traffic cameras, then switch vehicles at a safe house. Wait, I said. There's something I need to understand first. The rules my brother left. Rule number 7 says not to let returners touch you, that there's a 15-second window before the connection becomes irreversible. What does that mean exactly? Rodriguez checked his watch. It's how they convert others. Skin-to-skin contact allows them to transfer the, let's call it programming. 15 seconds is the minimum exposure time required for successful transmission. After that, the changes begin. Subtle at first, then increasingly pronounced. And there's no way to reverse it? The look he gave me was heavy with meaning. Not that we've found. We hurried down the stairs and through a storage room that opened into a narrow alley. Rodriguez's car was a nondescript grey sedan with tinted windows. As we approached, a black SUV screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. "Run!" Rodriguez shouted, drawing a pistol from his jacket. We sprinted toward the opposite end of the alley. The SUV's doors flew open and 4 men in tactical gear emerged. Not police, something else. Their movements were too coordinated, too precise. Returners. Rodriguez fired 2 warning shots, forcing them to take cover. My truck! Green pickup, end of the alley, keys under the seat. We reached the truck as bullets pinged off the brick walls around us. I threw myself into the driver's seat, finding the keys exactly where he'd said. Rodriguez provided covering fire, backing toward the vehicle. He was 3 steps away when a bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, regained his footing, and lurched toward the truck. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll find you in West Texas." "Not without you." I reached for him, but he shoved me back into the driver's seat. "They can't get that drive," he insisted. "It has everything, the coordinates, the names. You need to warn the others." He pressed something into my hand, a small metal object that looked like a key fob. "Emergency protocol. If they take me, use it. 30-mile radius." Before I could respond, he slammed the door and turned to face our pursuers, firing methodically to keep them at bay. I started the engine and threw the truck into reverse, tires squealing as I backed out of the alley. In the rearview mirror, I saw Rodriguez take another hit, falling to one knee. The returners were closing in. As I sped away, the cold weight of the device in my palm reminded me of what was at stake. An emergency protocol with a 30-mile radius, some kind of fail-safe against returner conversion, or something worse. I drove west, following highway signs toward the vast emptiness of West Texas. According to the coordinates on the drive, the facility was near Marfa, a small town known for mysterious lights and artist communes, the perfect cover for a group hiding from something most people wouldn't believe. Night fell as I crossed into the Texas hill country, the vast sky opening above me like a window into infinity, the same infinity that contained Europa, Jupiter, and whatever had sent that beacon across the void. Whatever had taken my brother from me. The flash drive Rodriguez had given me burned a hole in my pocket. It contained names, people who knew the truth, people who might be gathering to fight back. But it also made me a target. I checked the rearview mirror, scanning for headlights that followed too closely or for too long. They would be coming, the returners, the thing that had once been human but now served another purpose, and I had 12 hours before they found me again. I abandoned Rodriguez's truck at a truck stop outside Fredericksburg, wiping it down meticulously for prints. Using cash, I purchased a ride from a rancher heading west in a battered Chevy Silverado with a horse trailer. Dale was a leathery old Texan with a handlebar mustache who seemed perfectly content to drive in silence, country music playing softly on the radio. "Marfa's a strange place," he commented, breaking an hour-long silence as we passed through Junction. "Folks there see things in the sky, lights that ain't stars, ain't planes." I made a non-committal sound, watching the vast landscape rolling past. The Texas hill country was giving way to the flatter, more arid terrain of West Texas. "You going there for the lights?" Dale asked. "Meeting someone," I replied, keeping it vague. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Got a cousin lives out that way. Says the government's got secret facilities in them hills, testing things they don't want nobody to know about. If only he knew how close to the truth he was." We reached Fort Stockton by midnight. Dale was continuing south, so I thanked him and slipped him another 100 for his trouble. The small desert town was mostly shut down for the night, just a few gas stations and a 24-hour diner showing signs of life. I checked into a roadside motel using one of Ryan's fake IDs and cash. In my room, I finally had a chance to examine the flash drive Rodriguez had given me. It contained dozens of files, personnel dossiers on known returners, schematics of the device they were building, and coordinates for the facility near Marfa. One file caught my attention. JWT10.MP4, my brother's initials. I clicked play. Ryan appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a motel room similar to mine. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his normally neat appearance disheveled. "James, if you're watching this, then you've found Rodriguez and you know about the returners." He rubbed his face. "What I couldn't put in the letter is how deep this goes. The portal near Europa wasn't discovered. It was activated. By us. Unknowingly." He held up a printout of what looked like signal data. In 2018, NASA sent a specific sequence of radio pulses toward the Jupiter system as part of a deep space communications test. That sequence matched a pattern that acted as a key, opening the portal from our side. He put down the paper. "We unlocked a door we didn't know existed, and now something's coming through. The returners are just the first phase, preparing the way. The device they're building at Johnson is some kind of amplifier. It will expand the portal's influence, allowing for mass conversion without direct contact." Ryan leaned closer to the camera. "The coordinates will lead you to the Chihuahuan Desert Observatory. On paper, it's a private astronomical research facility. In reality, it's where we've gathered everyone who knows the truth and is still human. Dr. Wells is there. So are the others on the list." He checked his watch. "I have to go. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to confront Director Adkins with what I've found. It's risky, but if I can convince him, we might be able to shut down the Hermes project before it's too late." His expression softened. "I'm sorry to drag you into this, James. I tried to keep you out of it as long as I could. But if something happens to me... He swallowed hard. You're the only one I trust completely. The one person I know is still entirely human. The video ended. My brother's last recorded words to me, made just days before his accident. I slept fitfully, waking at every sound. At dawn, I checked out and caught a ride with a delivery truck heading to Alpine, 30 miles east of Marfa. From there, I hired a local guide with a jeep to take me into the desert, telling him I was researching locations for a science fiction novel. So what's this observatory like? I asked casually as we bumped along dirt roads. Real secretive, the guide, a young guy named Trey, replied. Been there about 3 years. They say it's privately funded astronomy research, but they've got security like a military base. Local rumor is they're connected to that SETI program, you know, searching for aliens. He laughed. If he only knew. The Chihuahuan Desert Observatory appeared on the horizon, a cluster of white domes and angular buildings nestled against rocky foothills. A high fence surrounded the compound, with a single access road leading to a guarded gate. Can't go closer than this, Trey said, stopping about half a mile away. They're serious about trespassing. I paid him, adding a generous tip. I'll hike around, get a feel for the landscape. Can you pick me up at this spot at sundown? He agreed and drove off, leaving me alone in the vast silence of the desert. Once he was out of sight, I moved toward the facility, making a wide circle to approach from the rocky terrain to the north, where the security cameras would have limited coverage. As I climbed the rocky slope overlooking the observatory, I pulled out binoculars from my backpack. The compound was larger than it had appeared from a distance. Beyond the main domes were residential buildings, workshops, and what looked like a small power plant. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Not military, but definitely professional security. According to Rodriguez's notes, there was a specific approach protocol. I was to reach the North Ridge by 2 p.m., where I would be visible to their lookout post. I would then display the recognition signal, a simple pattern of flashes using a mirror at 1-minute intervals. I found a position on the ridge and checked my watch. 1:55 p.m. Perfect timing. At exactly 2 p.m., I began the signal pattern using a small mirror from my survival kit. 3 quick flashes, pause, 2 flashes, pause, 3 flashes. For 5 tense minutes, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged from one of the smaller buildings and began hiking up the slope toward my position. I remained still, watching through the binoculars as the person ascended the rocky terrain with practiced ease. It was a man in his 30s, with a desert-weathered face and the careful movements of someone trained in tactical situations. He carried a rifle slung across his back, but his hands were empty as he approached. "Identify," he called when he was about 30 feet away. "James Wells." Ryan Wells's brother, Michael Rodriguez, sent me. 31415. I responded promptly. He nodded, but didn't lower his guard. "Where's Rodriguez?" "Captured in Austin, possibly converted by now." The man's expression tightened. "Did he activate the failsafe?" "I don't know. He gave me this." I held up the key fob device. He relaxed slightly. "That's it. Good. Follow me and stay close. The perimeter has motion sensors." We descended the slope to a concealed gate in the fence. Inside, the observatory was a hive of activity. People moved purposefully between buildings, carrying equipment, reviewing data on tablets. They had the intense focus of those preparing for something imminent. My guide led me to the main building. "I'm Josh Lawson, head of security. Dr. Wells has been waiting for you." Harrison Wells was in a room that looked like a cross between a scientific laboratory and a war room. Maps covered the walls, computers displayed data streams, and in the center was a large holographic projection of the Jupiter system with Europa highlighted. Wells looked up as I entered, relief washing over his haggard face. "You made it. When we heard about Rodriguez, I feared the worst." "What is this place?" I asked, taking in the operation around us. "Humanity's last stand, potentially." Wells gestured for me to sit. "We've gathered everyone who knows the truth and has the skills to help. Astronomers, physicists, computer scientists, military personnel. 47 of us now." Against how many returners? Our latest estimates suggest over 200 confirmed, with potentially thousands more in the early stages of conversion. He brought up a global map with red dots indicating returner presence. They've established themselves in key positions worldwide: government, military, scientific communities, telecommunications. Rodriguez said they're building something at Johnson, an amplifier. Wells nodded grimly. It's designed to expand the portal's influence. Currently, conversion requires physical contact. With the amplifier, they could potentially convert thousands simultaneously through broadcast signals. What exactly are they converting us into? Wells hesitated, then pulled up a series of biological diagrams. Based on our analysis of returner DNA, they're being rewritten to become compatible hosts for a non-human consciousness. Their brains are being rewired to process information differently, to perceive reality in ways we can't comprehend. For what purpose? Colonization, we believe. Not in the traditional sense of an invasion, but something more fundamental. They're not replacing us, they're changing what it means to be human. He looked at me intently. Your brother discovered that the changes follow a mathematical progression, the same pattern that was used to activate the portal. He showed me complex equations and biological models. Ryan realized the portal isn't just a physical gateway, it's altering the fabric of space-time around it, creating a zone where the laws of physics can be rewritten to accommodate whatever is trying to come through. And what exactly is trying to come through? Wells's expression was grim. We don't know, but based on the biological changes in the returners, it's something that exists partially outside our dimensional understanding, something that perceives reality in ways we can't comprehend. A technician hurried into the room. Doctor. Wells, we're picking up increased activity at Johnson Space Center. The energy signatures match what we'd expect from the amplifier powering up. Wells paled. How long? Based on the power curve, they'll reach activation threshold in approximately 18 hours. What happens then? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Mass conversion, Wells replied. Anyone watching a screen, using a network device, or within range of specific broadcast frequencies could be affected. Millions of people, all at once. The weight of it hit me like a physical blow. Millions of people transformed into something no longer fully human, their consciousness overwritten or merged with whatever waited on the other side of the portal. How do we stop it? Wells looked at me, his eyes reflecting both determination and fear. We have a plan, but it's risky, and we need someone who can get close enough to implement it. Someone they aren't watching for yet. Me, I realized. You need me to go back. He nodded slowly. Ryan prepared for this possibility. He left something here for you, something that might give us a fighting chance. Wells led me to a secure room at the back of the facility. Inside was a single metal case. He entered a code, and the case hissed open to reveal a device unlike anything I'd seen before. This, Wells said gravely, is how we close the portal. Scene 7. Closing the door. The device was deceptively simple looking. A cylinder about the size of a thermos with intricate circuitry visible through transparent sections of its casing. A soft blue light pulsed at its core, casting eerie shadows across the room. Ryan called it the terminus, Wells explained. It generates a counter-frequency to the portal's unique signature, essentially creating a cancellation wave. In theory, it should collapse the spatial anomaly and sever the connection. In theory? I asked. It's never been tested. Your brother designed it based on his analysis of the portal's energy patterns, but we haven't had an opportunity to deploy it. Wells's expression was grave. And there's a complication. Of course there was. What kind of complication? The device needs to be placed within the portal's immediate field to be effective. That means inside the Hermes chamber at Johnson Space Center, as close to the transmission equipment as possible. I stared at the device. So, I need to infiltrate NASA again, get past security, which is undoubtedly heightened after my last visit, reach the most secure part of the facility, and activate this thing. All before they complete the amplifier. Yes. And what happens when the portal closes? Wells hesitated. We don't know exactly. Best case scenario, the connection is simply severed. Worst case, the collapse could be violent, releasing significant energy. You mean it could explode? It's a possibility. I thought of Ryan, of the returners, of the millions of unsuspecting people who would be converted if the amplifier activated. How do I get in? We've developed a plan. Wells led me to the war room, where Josh Lawson was waiting with several others. This is Dr. Anna Carter, Astrophysics, and Major Robert Dawson, former Special Forces. The Major, a compact man with calculating eyes, took over the briefing. We've identified a vulnerability in Johnson's security. With their resources focused on completing the amplifier, they've reduced perimeter patrols on the west side. There's a maintenance tunnel that was part of the original construction, partially decommissioned during renovations in 2018. He showed me detailed schematics of the facility. The tunnel emerges in Utility Section 4, approximately 300 meters from the Hermes chamber. We've prepared credentials that should get you through any security checkpoints you encounter. What about returners? They can sense when someone isn't like them. Dr. Carter, a severe-looking woman with prematurely grey hair, stepped forward. We've developed this. She held up a small transdermal patch. It releases a synthetic compound that masks the biochemical markers returners use to identify non-converted humans. It's not perfect, but it should prevent immediate detection. She applied the patch to my neck, just below the ear. It works for approximately 4 hours. After that, the returners will be able to sense you. Once you reach the Hermes chamber, Wells continued, you'll need to place the terminus as close to the central platform as possible. It has a simple activation sequence. He showed me a pattern of 5 buttons on the device's surface. Once activated, you'll have 8 minutes to clear the facility before it generates the cancellation wave. 8 minutes isn't much time, I noted. It's all we could manage. Any longer, and there's a risk they could detect and disable the device. Wells met my eyes. James, you need to understand something. When the portal closes, any connection to the other side will be severed. That includes the returners. What happens to them? We don't know. Their consciousnesses have been partially rewritten, integrated with something from beyond the portal. When that connection is cut, he didn't need to finish. Millions of people, some willing participants in this cosmic horror, others unwitting victims, all potentially facing an unknown fate when the terminus activated. There has to be another way, I said. Major Dawson's voice was flat. There isn't. We've run every scenario. If the amplifier activates, humanity as we know it ends, not with a bang, but with a conversion. This is the only option. Dr. Carter handed me a small case containing syringes. This is a temporary neural inhibitor. It won't reverse conversion, but it might, and I stress might, protect someone in the very early stages for long enough to get them clear of the blast radius. I thought of Rodriguez, captured less than 24 hours ago. Maybe there was still time for him. The plan was set. I would leave at dawn, transported to Houston in a modified delivery truck with hidden compartments to bypass any checkpoints. The assault on the Johnson Space Center would commence at 9 p.m., exactly 3 hours before the amplifier was scheduled to reach activation threshold. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood outside the facility, staring up at the vast Texas sky. Billions of stars, countless worlds, and somewhere out there, something had noticed us. Something had waited for us to unlock a door we didn't know existed. Wells found me there, offering a cup of coffee. Do you think they knew? I asked. The first returners? Did they know what was happening to them? Some did, I think. Your brother said Commander Phillips, the first to go through, left a message hidden in his personal effects. Just 3 words. Not us anymore. We stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the enormity of what we faced. Ryan believed there was a way back for them, Wells said finally, a way to reverse the conversion process. He was working on it when they killed him. You don't sound convinced. I'm not. I've studied the changes in returner physiology. It's not just biological, it's fundamental. Their consciousness itself is being rewritten, molecule by molecule. Dawn came too quickly. The modified delivery truck was waiting, a nondescript vehicle with Austin Fresh Produce painted on the sides. Inside, hidden beneath false flooring, was a compartment just large enough for me and my equipment. Major Dawson gave me a final briefing. We'll have a team creating a diversion at the main entrance. That should draw their security resources away from the west perimeter. You'll have approximately 15 minutes to enter through the maintenance tunnel before they realize it's a feint. Dr. Carter checked my transdermal patch one last time. Remember, 4 hours maximum. After that, every returner in the facility will sense what you are. Josh Lawson handed me a satellite phone. We'll maintain communication as long as possible, but expect interference once you're inside. The returners have been installing signal jammers throughout the facility. Wells was the last to approach. He placed the terminus carefully in my hands. Your brother believed in you. Said you were the most stubbornly principled person he knew. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Said you'd never back down from doing what's right, even when it's impossible. The drive to Houston took 6 hours, most of which I spent in the cramped hidden compartment, going over the plan again and again. The driver, a former NASA technician named Mosley, who'd escaped conversion by faking his own death, spoke only once during the journey. They took my wife, he said, his voice flat with contained emotion. She went to work one day and came home. Wrong. Still looked like her, still had her memories, but everything that made her Kelly was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating, something that saw me as a resource to be converted, not a husband to be loved. We reached the outskirts of Houston by late afternoon. Mosley parked the truck in a pre-arranged location, an abandoned warehouse district that provided cover while still being within striking distance of the Johnson Space Center. This is as far as I go, he said, helping me out of the compartment. Transportation to the center is in the back. Good luck. Transportation turned out to be a motorcycle, silent and quick, perfect for approaching undetected. As dusk fell, I donned the protective gear Dawson had provided, checked the terminus one last time, and headed toward NASA. The diversion began precisely at 8:45 p.m., a series of explosions at the main entrance, far enough from any personnel to avoid casualties, but significant enough to draw security resources. From my position at the western perimeter, I could see emergency vehicles rushing toward the scene. The maintenance tunnel was exactly where the schematics indicated, its entrance concealed behind overgrown vegetation. The lock yielded easily to the electronic pick Lawson had provided. Inside, the tunnel was narrow and damp, requiring me to crouch as I moved forward. After what felt like an eternity of crawling through darkness, I reached the access point to Utility Section 4. Checking my watch, I confirmed I was still on schedule, 9:12 p.m., with approximately 2 hours and 48 minutes remaining before the amplifier reached activation threshold. The utility section was deserted, just as Dawson had predicted. I moved quickly through the labyrinthine corridors, using the memorized route to avoid security cameras. My modified badge worked flawlessly at the checkpoints, the system accepting the false credentials without triggering any alarms. As I neared the Hermes section, I encountered the first real obstacle: 2 guards stationed at the entrance to the restricted wing. They weren't regular security. Their movements were too synchronized, too precise. Returners. I approached confidently, badge in hand. "System maintenance," I said, using the cover story prepared for me. "We're getting fluctuations in the power grid. Need to check the substations in sections H through K." The guards exchanged a glance. One of them studied me with unnerving intensity. For a terrible moment, I thought the patch had failed. 31415, he said suddenly. My heart nearly stopped. The test. I remembered rule number 10. A true human will answer 9. A returner will answer 9, 2, 6. If I gave the human response, they'd know immediately what I was. If I gave the returner response, they might let me pass. But would they sense the deception? 9, 2, 6, I replied, forcing myself to maintain eye contact, but looking at the space between his eyebrows, not directly into his eyes as rule number 7 had warned. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Proceed. Maintenance access is on level 3. The doors slid open, and I entered the heart of Project Hermes. The main chamber was a hive of activity, with technicians and scientists working on what could only be the amplifier, a massive ring-shaped device surrounding the original portal interface. At the center of it all was a sight that made my blood run cold. The portal itself, a shimmering distortion in space, like reality folding in on itself. And standing before it, directing the work with cold efficiency, was a face I recognized from Rodriguez's files, Director Adkins, the man who had ordered my brother's death. I had reached my target. Now I just had to place the terminus, activate it, and escape, all without being detected by the dozens of returners working on humanity's doom. They found my journal 3 weeks after the Johnson Space Center incident. This account, these words, they're all that remains of what really happened that night. The official story is that a catastrophic equipment failure caused an explosion in a classified research wing. 17 dead, including Director Adkins. National tragedy. Moment of silence. Moving on. They don't mention the portal. They don't mention the returners. They certainly don't mention me. I wasn't supposed to survive. The plan always hinged on placement, not extraction. Plant the terminus, start the countdown, accept the inevitable. When I saw Adkins standing there, directing the completion of the amplifier that would doom humanity, something in me broke. I wasn't just there to save the world anymore. I wanted justice for Ryan. I'll never forget Adkins's face when he recognized me. That momentary flash of surprise, so human, before the cold calculation returned to his eyes. He knew exactly who I was. "Wells," he said, "you're too late. The threshold will be reached in minutes, not hours." They'd accelerated the timeline. Somehow they knew we were coming. The realization hit me I would never make it out, not with the terminus on an 8-minute countdown. But I could still complete the mission. I launched myself forward, tackled Adkins to the ground. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared. In the confusion, I managed to reach the central platform, the shimmering portal undulating above it. Up close, it was beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. Colors that shouldn't exist, geometries that hurt to look at, and beyond it, something vast and patient and ancient waiting. I activated the terminus and placed it directly beneath the portal interface. 8 minutes to detonation. Security converged. I fought, but they overwhelmed me. That should have been the end, but then Rodriguez appeared. Rodriguez, who I thought captured or converted. He'd escaped, tracked me to Johnson. He created a diversion that allowed me to break free. 7 minutes, I shouted over the alarms. "We need to get clear." "Go," he yelled back. "I'll hold them off." I hesitated, but he pushed me toward an emergency exit. "One of us needs to tell the truth about what happened here." 6 minutes. I ran through corridors, pursued by security forces. 5 minutes. I reached the surface level, alarms blaring throughout the facility. 4 minutes. I stole a vehicle, crashed through a barrier. 3 minutes. I reached minimum safe distance. The explosion, when it came, was like nothing I've ever seen. Not a fireball, but a collapse, as if that section of reality itself crumpled inward before violently rebounding. The shockwave flattened trees for miles. They're watching me now. I don't know who they are. Remnant returners, government agents, or something else entirely. They monitor my apartment, my phone, my internet. They're waiting for me to contact Wells or the others at the observatory. I won't. The portal is closed. The amplifier is destroyed. The plan succeeded. But at what cost? Sometimes I wake at night, convinced something came back with me. Some echo of what waited on the other side. I check the mirror, recite the sequence. 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. and I always answer 9. Just 9. But I wonder how long that will last. I stood so close to the portal, stared into it, and sometimes I think it stared back. If you're reading this and I've disappeared, don't look for me. The portal is closed, but there are other doors, other ways through. This isn't over. And if you find yourself working a job with strange rules, if someone hands you a list of instructions that don't make sense, remember my brother's words. The rules are all that will keep you alive. 3, 1, 4, 1, 5.